Hello everyone, it's Craig. Today we're going to talk about the case of Henry Eppers. Henry was the bugler, at least he ended up being the bugler. He started out as a private. In Company I of the 6th Maryland Infantry, that was a Union unit. You may note that there's no such thing as a Company J. I and J are the same thing. That just happens to be the way it is. So whenever I'm researching someone, I always like to go to the National Park Service Soldiers and Sailors website. You can Google it very easily and see what I can find and learn. Sometimes it's difficult to navigate, sometimes it's easy. But if you use the filters, you'll find that you'll get to your result much quicker. Notice up here it says there's 204,000 results for Henry Eppers, and that makes absolutely no sense. But if you condense it down using the filters, you usually get where you want to be. So here we have two individuals, except they're the same individual, Henry Eppers, and he's on the Union side. He's located in Maryland. He's serving with the 6th Regiment Maryland Infantry. That much we know. So let's move on. The next place I'm going to go is to Fold 3, because there I'm going to find compiled military service records. And if I'm fortunate that I'm dealing with someone in a border state or in a small state, the compiled military service records will be on Fold 3. If they're not on Fold 3, there will be an index. But the compiled military service records for Maryland are in fact on Fold 3. As I wander through them, I can find the 6th Infantry. And as I wander through the 6th Infantry, I can find the letters, and there's an E, and that E can get me to Henry, and Henry has a compiled military service record of 22 cards. So the compiled military service records were originally on microfilm. So the 6th Infantry is actually on 3 rolls of microfilm, and Henry is located on roll 150. And when I go to Fold 3, and I can pull his envelope, and what I learned from his envelope are a few things. One, that he's the 411th person in his regiment alphabetically. That doesn't mean anything. That he started out as a private and ended up a bugler. Well, that's something to know. He evidently has 2 personal papers, and he has a bookmark. So I definitely want to search out the bookmark, and I want to search out the personal papers. Meanwhile, the abstract cards, there are muster in rolls, company muster rolls. Here he's missing in action. Here he's a deserter. Muster out rolls. That's just a sampling of the abstract cards that may exist and do exist for Henry Eppers. There's also a bookmark. You always want to read everything it has to say in the bookmark because it will be helpful to you over time, and we'll talk about that a little later. There is another envelope inside the envelope for Henry, and it in fact has not 2 enclosures, but 5 enclosures. And when we look at this, we see that he was a prisoner of war. We see he was transferred to a hospital after he was admitted to a hospital, and we see that he was a deserter twice. And also, we have a memorandum from prisoner of war records, and this is the front of it, and this is the back of it. So you definitely want to pay attention to all of these things, especially the envelope full of personal papers, and especially the memorandum for the prisoner of war. So what do we know so far? We know that Henry Eppers was with Company I, 6th Maryland Infantry. Union, he was 22 according to the abstract cards. He starts out as a private, then becomes a bugler. There are 22 abstract cards in all. There are some personal records, and there's a bookmark. So the first thing I would do, and this is what I normally do, because it just makes things so much clearer, is I sort all the cards in a Word document by creating a timeline. So this is his timeline. He joins the 8th of August in 1862 in Baltimore. By the 9th, he's in Camp Hoffman, which is in Baltimore. And he is present in November and December of 62 and January and February of 63, on into April. And then all of a sudden in May, June 63, he's missing in action. So I would be looking for what was going on in May and June of 1863, battle-wise, that he would be missing in action. But just keep that in the back of your head. He's then in September, October, absent in the hospital. He ends up in Annapolis. Ending up in Annapolis, in my mind, tells me that he was a POW. Now, we know he was a POW because of the POW slips, but somebody ending up in Annapolis normally is going to be a POW and is part of the exchange process. He gets transferred from Annapolis to the general hospital in Baltimore City, and then he's sick at this general hospital in Baltimore. And then he's present in September, October. He deserts the 7th of December. He deserted in Frederick. And then he's back where he belongs in January, February, March, and April. And then he musters out in 1865. And he's last paid 13 August 1864. So he hasn't been paid for a while. And he's due a bounty of $75. His bounty actually was $100, of which he was only paid $75. So let's see what the bookmark says. The bookmark says he was captured at Winchester, Virginia, 15 June 1863, confined at Richmond, Virginia on 23 June 1863, and paroled at City Point, Virginia. That's the parole point for the Confederacy. The parole point for the Union is up in Parole, Maryland, outside of Annapolis. On 23 July 1863, he reported to College Green Barracks, that's at Camp Parole, outside of Annapolis. On 24 July 1863, he was sent to Maryland, arrived at Camp Parole, Maryland, 2 August 1863, was present there 28 August 1863, and probably until 14 October 1863, when he was admitted to Jarvis General Hospital in Baltimore, Maryland, with fever, and was transferred 6 February 1864 to Camden Street General Hospital, also in Baltimore, 13 February 1864, with some sort of diagnosis, and was returned to duty 16 July 1864. I really should have looked up what diagnosis that was. I use Hooper's Medical Dictionary because it's done in the 1840s, and it's pretty much current with Civil War diagnosis. But anyway, I apologize for not looking that up. I'll do a thing on Civil War medical terminology at some point, just for fun. He's reported as a deserter 7 August 1864 at Winchester, Virginia. Was arrested 16 August. He didn't desert for very long. Maryland by Provost Marshal, 5th District, Maryland. A $30 reward was paid and delivered to the military. He was delivered to the military post on 16 August. He was confined at Fort McHenry, 17 August, and sent to Harper's Ferry, Virginia on 31 August. He was subsequently restored to duty by Special Order Number 70, Headquarters, U.S. 3rd Division, 6th AC, dated 17 September 1864, without trial. The charge of desertion no longer stands against him. The record of the fact that he was absent in desertion from or on about 7 August 1864 cannot, however, be expunged. Then he's charged with desertion again on 7 December, and that charge was removed. He was tried before a general court-martial on charge of desertion, and he was found not guilty of desertion, but guilty of absence without leave, and sentenced to forfeit $10 per month for 2 months, and to make good the time absent without leave, 30 days. And that's from General Order Number 11, Headquarters, U.S. Division, U.S. 3rd Division, 6 AC, dated 22, whatever that was, 1865. And the notation of 8 April 1886 is canceled. So that gives you some insight into his desertions. This means that one of the things that we're going to be searching for is a general court-martial, because there's paperwork in the National Archives, not anywhere else, not available digitally, but only in the National Archives, relating to court-martials. And I'll see if I can talk about how to get to court-martials once the National Archives opens up. Or maybe before, if I run out of things to talk about. Do you think that'll happen? So in looking at his personal papers, we see that he has a prisoner of war record. We've seen that. Mission to the hospital, 2 desertions, and a transfer to the hospital. So here is his transfer from Jarvis to Jarvis General Hospital. And here is D264, 1864. This is Captain S.H. Duncan saying, we paid a reward of $30. We paid a reward. This guy's a deserter, and we want somebody to charge him with desertion. Go find the competent authority to charge him. And that's what this is all about. So the assistant quartermaster is the guy who paid it, and the provost marshal is the guy that has to find the forwarding authority competent to hold a trial. The reward was paid to William J. Bunley. I would, given the location of the reward, given that it was in Maryland, given that it looks like he went home kind of thing, I would want to know what the relationship of William J. Bunley was to Henry Eppers, and I would start by looking in the 1860 census. So we created a timeline of the man. Now what I do is I create a timeline of the unit, and I do this in a different color. So the black here is what has come out of the abstract cards, and the red is what has come out of anything on the web that relates to the 6th Maryland Regiment, whether it be a website, whether it be Dyer's Compendium on Ancestry or Dyer's Compendium on Soldiers and Sailors. They don't bother to tell you that that's where it comes from, but for the most part, this stuff all comes out of Dyer's Compendium. So you may have multiple sources that provide you with history about the unit, but pretty much all of it comes from, when it's a Union unit, all of it comes from Dyer's Compendium of the War of Rebellion. So when we look at the red, we see he's musters in Camp Hoffman, Baltimore. Then they moved to the Army of the Potomac in Western Maryland. Then for a period of time, they were defense of Williamsport, assigned to Kenly's brigade, and defense of the Upper Potomac. They're part of the 8th Army Corps Middle Department. And then they have duty in Williamsburg and Hagerstown from October to November 1862. November to December 1862, they moved to Maryland Heights in 11-12 December. That's near across the river from Harper's Ferry. January and February 63, he's present. And in March, they moved to Berryville, Virginia. That's in Clark County, and are attached to the 3rd Brigade, 2nd Division, 8th Army Corps. Then he's present in April, May, June. He's absent, missing in action. So in June, on the 10th of June, there is action at Kelly's Ford. 13th of June, they're in Berryville. 13th of June, they're in Occoquan Creek and the retreat to Winchester. 14 to 15 June is the Second Battle of Winchester, and 13 to 16 June is the retreat to Harper's Ferry, and they're attached to Elliott's command. Now, so what we have here are battles. One of the nice things about Fold 3 is that they have maps. So here's a map for the Second Battle of Winchester, and if we were to continue this timeline, we would find that he was also involved in the Third Battle of Winchester. So it actually turns out that he's captured at the Second Battle of Winchester. So normally this might be the end of your research. You've looked at the compiled military service cards, you went far enough to create a timeline, you went and found the history of the unit, and you integrated the man's timeline with the history of the unit. Well, there are other things that you can do. One of them is look at the regimental cards. And the regimental cards are found on Fold 3. If you look at the first letter of the alphabet, A, and look just above the letter A in the first A that exists in the run for the regiment, you'll find unit records. So on the regimental card, it says, this is for September 1862, the regiment moved forward in line at 11 o'clock p.m., 7 September 1862, and marched to Randallstown on a scout and some word I can't read, to camp at 11 o'clock a.m. 8 September, distance march 15 miles was ordered to Franklin, Tennessee, except I think actually that's Franklin Town on the 10th of September, because there's no way they would be ordered to Tennessee. Remained there in Randallstown, it clearly looks like Tennessee. Remained there, that there being Randallstown, until the 20th of September, and ordered to the Monocacy, which is a river nearby, on the 20th of September, and to Frederick Junction on the 23rd of September, remaining at Frederick Junction until the 30th of September, and then to Williamsport. And then the regimental return for October says Williamsport. And the regimental return for November says Williamsport. Well, except Henry Eppers was actually in a company. He was in Company I of the 6th Maryland Regiment. So the regimental return deals with what the regiment was doing. It doesn't necessarily deal with what an individual company was doing. So in addition to the regimental cards, there are also company cards. So you will find and they're in order A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. And you look at I, and so there are company cards, and you want to look at those because they will tell you specifically what the company is doing, not just the regiment. And you can see, as I look at this, you can see the difference in detail between the company card and the regimental card, and the history of the regiment from Dyer's Compendium. So on the company card, it says that there was a reconnaissance from Baltimore to Randallstown and return, distance of 24 miles, about 6 September 1862. They marched from Baltimore to Franklintown, 11 September 1862, a distance of 6 miles. Then they returned to Camden Station, 19 September, a distance of 6 miles. They transferred from Camden Station to Mavers Mills on 19 September. They marched from Mavers Mill to Monocacy Junction. See, that's different. Junction is the town, not the river. 25 September, distance of 2 miles, and marched from Monocacy Junction to Williamsport. 30 September 62, a distance of 35 miles. So you can see the difference in what is actually going on at the company level. There's much greater detail. So the November-December card says, marched from Williamsburg to Harper's Ferry, 12 December, distance 22 miles. So if you were to look at each one of the regimental cards and look at each one of the company cards and integrate the regimental cards and the company cards in with the timeline that you created with the Union unit history, and well, I guess it is a Union unit, the Union unit history, along with the man's history according to his abstract cards, you will get a full look at what the life of the man might have been during the war in regards to where he was located. And there are a few other things that I also do with a Civil War soldier regardless, and I'll just go over those rather quickly. One is I would look for his pension, and Henry, in fact, gets a pension. And this is the organizational card off of fold 3. And what I like about the organizational cards is many times it'll have a date of death. So here he has a date of death of May 28, 1910. And his widow also gets a pension. So I definitely would want to get to the pension as soon as I could. And I would look to see if there's a headstone. And there is. And it's in St. Mary's Cemetery in Hamden. And that is a VA headstone. Unfortunately, VA headstones from 1910 the headstone applications are not available on Ancestry, but if his death was after 1925, I would be looking for a headstone application for him. I would look for the headstone application anyway. There isn't one there. Those records have yet to be digitized. But in the quartermaster files, there should be a headstone application for Henry Eppers. I'm also going to look for any monuments that might exist on the battlefield, and this is the 6th Maryland Infantry Monument that exists at Petersburg. The 6th fought all the way through and was present at Appomattox. Now, the interesting thing is that this monument was erected in 2011 by the 6th Regiment of Maryland Infantry Descendants Association. And my attempt to research that group, they don't seem to have a website, but the fact that 10 years ago such a group existed, I would want to track them down if I had any interest in the 6th Maryland Infantry. And then one final thing, which really upset me because I realized this after I'd finished putting all these slides together, is that Heritage Books has published a book on the 6th Regiment of Maryland Infantry, which I should have mentioned to the person who gave me this information days ago. So anyway, because it's my nature to provide books available at a discount, this book, Manly Deeds and Womanly Words, The History of the 6th Regiment of Maryland Infantry, will be available for a 20% discount if you use the discount code SIXTH, S-I-X-T-H. So this has been Craig, working on converting people doing genealogy into genealogists day by day. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive. I wonder how many of you had actually gone back into company cards and regimental cards and didn't even, whether you even knew that they existed. They are a wealth of information, and they're just sort of tucked away, hidden away in fold 3, and very few people even talk about them. So I guess the usual: subscribe. Maybe you could even like this. That would be okay. And click that bell so you know that you will be notified when something else comes out, like tomorrow. Thank you all so very much. Have a great day.